Hello, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome. Today I will be breaking down the latest monthly report for the Persistent Universe. As always, a huge thank you to all of my patrons and channel members, in particular to my latest patron, Rickan. Thank you so much for the support, it is truly appreciated. So as always, these are quite lengthy, so grab your drinks, grab your snacks. Kicking off with the AI tech team, they continued to improve how NPCs transition between servers, including serializing movement requests and navigation paths. They also updated navigation generation elements, plus a new feature continued development as well, in which the team will share more about in the future. Now, I think they have redesigned how navigation generation is created to work with all the planets, especially around the planet's poles, as they were having some trouble with the previous version, but I assume that was implemented already, as I have not heard any more about that recently. Now, for the AI content team, social AI designers joined the narrative team to form a larger group focused on improving the Star Citizen experience, and as part of this, they began meeting with design and the creative directors to walk through various locations, looking for opportunities to clean up existing behaviours or add new ones. And while many of the behaviours will be based on work that was done for Squadron 42, the expansive nature of the Persistent Universe will require some bespoke additions. Now, this team, I feel, will have their work set out for them for the foreseeable, as there are already so many unique locations to add flavour to for the residents, and even more to come. But I am very happy to see them working on further expanding the variety of the characters, the locations, making them feel so much more like they belong to the location. And I feel this will start to become apparent once their work starts rolling out. Now, AI content are also in the process of reviewing locations throughout Pyro to ensure the environment and behaviour setup work correctly together, while also instilling a sense of the intended narrative there. And finally, for the team, aside from outlining behaviour improvements and needs for Star Citizen 1.0, narrative design kicked off several initiatives to determine the required tech and use cases for future social spaces, which will ultimately lead to a vertical slice showing a gold standard social space with the level of interaction the game will aim for. Now, I really hope they share this vertical slice, which is essentially as it says there, a gold standard of whatever it is it's showing off. This will be their target for the rest of the game to aim for in this area, really selling that feeling of a living, breathing universe. And I wonder what place they will choose. It would be great to see a place like Astor's Clearing just bustling with NPCs coming and going and doing things, traders and all sorts of stuff going on. That would be cool. Now, next up, we have the animation team. They continue to work on a selection of creatures previously seen in teaser videos, alongside improving the creatures we already have in the PU. Plus, they progressed with an unannounced addition that the team is looking forward to seeing in the game. I'm assuming that's a creature that we will stumble upon. Now, the creatures that we have seen in these teaser trailers could be the Zephypods, they could be the Storm Walls, the Pyro Crab or Boreal Stalker, although I don't think we've seen the Pyro Crab or Boreal Stalker in a trailer as such, but we have with the Storm Walls, so I'm assuming that's one they're talking about here, alongside the Quasi-Grazers, of course, or anything else, really. But I suspect that there will be a lot of secret creatures making their way in as well, considering they only spoke about the Quasi-Grazers on Inside Star Citizen, and they have said in the past that sometimes they won't tell us when a creature is coming into the game, they will just let us discover it for ourselves, which I'm glad they're doing that. Now, the character art team continued to work on utility and specialist armors, while character concept art supported the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo, which is an event around November, and they also progressed with their ongoing exploration of fauna. Now, I'm really looking forward to seeing what other fauna type they can come up with. Cloud Imperium want to flesh out all the relevant worlds and environments with creatures of all kinds that make sense to the environment, that are part of the ecosystem and the food chain. And I'm sure we will see all the usual conventional type of creatures within reason, but also a lot of alien ones too. Now, moving on to the ship art team, they moved several unannounced vehicles towards their grey box reviews, while others approached their LOD 0 or level of detail 0 and final content reviews. Plus, work on the RSI Polaris continued, with its exterior approaching completion. There are so many ships on the way, so many vehicles that are in the works, but they are keeping them pretty quiet. but it does sound like they're making some good headway there, and I suspect we'll see some for 4.0, Intergalactic Aerospace Expo, and whatever else is coming up. Now, for the core gameplay team, they progressed on a lot of behind-the-scenes changes that will improve how various gameplay systems handle environments that span multiple servers. There is a lot of work going on to get systems working with server meshing. They've been converting a lot of systems already to work with it, so hopefully there's not much left to do. Now, progress was also made on the overheat mechanic, with the team adding support for different atmospheric temperatures. For example, weapons may overheat at different rates based on the environment that they're in. And this is another facet into making the right decision on what equipment to take with you, depending on where you're going. So if you're going to an icy planet or a location that's cold, taking an energy weapon would be a good idea because it will potentially overheat slower than if you were heading into a hot, humid location. I do like these minor, important details that will allow experience and knowledge and skill to prevail. Now, the charge and drain feature progressed as well, and now features client-side prediction to give immediate feedback to players when they are charging or draining, even if there's latency between the client and server, which is an important addition, as we don't want to be accidentally blowing something up due to lag. Now, the team also began adding logic to declutter the UI by grouping markers of the same type, while the implementation of weapon groups and group presets continued. I'm really looking forward to seeing the new HUDs and MFDs come to the PU. We know the MFDs are coming in with 324.2, which isn't going to be too far away now that 324.1 is already released alive, but it is going to be a much welcome, refreshing change, especially when switching from one manufacturer to another, being able to see that visual difference. It'll give us a bit of a visual rest, really. And not to mention that having presets is going to be very, very helpful, and groups. Now, progress continued on jump points, which began with improved debugging tools to better visualize potential exit points for players. Turbulence was also implemented, which will affect the flight experience within the tunnel, with the designers currently tweaking the strength to get the desired impact. And visual effects was also added, including cockpit vibration based on where in the tunnel the player is. I'm assuming it varies depending if you're at the start, the middle, or the end. And obstacles were placed that players will need to navigate around. Plus, further failure states for jump tunnels were determined before the feature was submitted to QA for testing. So a lot of aspects there involved in jump points, all of which will have an impact on the gameplay and how it feels and what we need to do. But the fact that QA are now playing with it, have it in their hands, it is not going to be long until it starts rolling out to the PTU for 4.0. Now, progress was made on the resource network, engineering gameplay, and live support. For example, the team implemented a new behavior for critical components, which will replace the existing soft death mechanic, and when live, only certain items like power plants will trigger an explosion or soft death when destroyed. Now, this is great news. Some of you might not be aware, but this soft death system that we have now is just a temporary system to kind of mimic the idea that your ship is being disabled, rather than it just being blown up. But even, especially when Maelstrom comes along, the physical damage system, the only way your ship will ever get to a point of exploding will be based on the power plant, for example. So if the power plant takes enough damage, then yes, it will explode. But everything else will just more likely disable the ship. And we will hear a lot more about this, I'm sure, on Thursday, because Inside Star Citizen will be looking at the resource network going into more depth. But this will create a much more systemic method for when the power plant gets destroyed, stopping all the components from receiving power, or if a certain component stops working, you will no longer get the function of that component. It'll need to be fixed, it'll need to be replaced. So properly disabling your ship, not just artificially like we see with soft death, which is going to heavily push towards tactics, and especially if you're trying to board a ship and not destroy it, you'll want to find a way to disable it, which will lead heavily into how you go about fighting that ship. Now, the engineering screen was polished as well, while the new room selection UI was added for live support, and the team also gave design the ability to control the total power output of multiple active power plants, and this way more power plants don't necessarily result in linearly increasing power production. Now, work on radar and scanning continued throughout August, with the team reviewing it in Arena Commander to assess the impact on the player experience and tune the values to achieve the desired effect. Now, again, really happy to hear that they are now tweaking it and they have it in Arena Commander, as this means it should be coming along pretty soon. My guess would be for 4.0. I would love to see it come into 3.24.2, but I don't think it will. Hopefully, this should give us the ability to once again scan a ship to see if it is fair salvage or not, but overall getting the radars and scanners and signature system up to date is of big importance. Talking of which, the team also focused on closing out the feature work for Delta signatures, giving design more control over how to react to changes, plus tasks were completed for audible signatures. So these Delta signatures are more background signatures given off when performing tasks like switching from nav mode to SEM or pinging with the radar. They will be, I think, passively picked up or detectable, but audio signatures are what you would expect. They're decibels, volume, that will be detectable as well, and this will go for not just flight, but FPS as well, your footsteps and firing a weapon and whatnot. Now, I would love to see the signature system greatly reduce signatures when your ship is completely turned off, rather than having to keep your power on just to keep your shields up. Ideally, if you were to turn everything off, once your ship's heat signature has cooled down enough, you should essentially be almost invisible to the radar unless you're very close to it. I hope that is the intention, especially when base building comes along, being able to just hide amongst the trees or whatever without being detected and without having to put your ship on. Because when you have your power on, you're detectable at range, but when you turn it off, your shields are down, so we need to be more hidden. Anyway, the ongoing mission system refactor progressed, with the team fixing various issues causing existing behaviors to break or function incorrectly, and now the mission system can run in minimal mode, allowing it to be included in the seeding service and upcoming mission factory service, which generates contracts. Clients can now query available missions, and the contract generator can apply legacy settings to work with the previous system as well. I'm really interested in seeing how the dynamic mission system scales with all the gameplay types, just to see how much replayability and variation can be provided going forwards. They're going to use this system for beacons, as we will hear in a second. They already use it for hauling, as we have seen in 3.2.3 or 3.2.4. There are hundreds of hauling missions. That will apply to mining, it'll apply to salvaging, it'll apply to the beacon system, so players can respond to NPC beacons. It is going to explode with content, but again, that replayability and that variety needs to be there, otherwise it'll just feel repetitive. Anyway, implementation of service beacons for the mission system refactor began, while the team supported mission design on remaining blockade runner and cargo hauling issues. But like I say, interesting that the service beacons are starting to get implemented into the mission system refactor. Hopefully we can start seeing these beacons spawn dynamically based on various things going on in the verse. I don't think these are coming from players. They're not players putting out beacons. That is a separate thing. It is an NPC getting into bother, so needing medical rescue, needing refueling, that sort of thing. And if they can spawn them like they do with the hauling missions, we could see a lot of these beacons going off where players need to go to the aid of NPCs for various reasons, not just combat reasons, but help and assistance or support. Now finally, for the core gameplay team, the devs spent considerable time reviewing internal and external feedback to plan further improvements to the feature released in Alpha 3.2.4. Now, for the economy team, they spent the month getting closer to uniting all of their work into a cohesive economy consisting of ships, items, missions, fuel, consumables, freelancing, careers, and more. Plus, progress was made on the economy setup for Pyro. Now, this has to be one of the most impactful updates that we've had for a long while. The economy needs to be balanced across the board and not allow one mission or profession to be widely imbalanced, nor for any item for sale be out of whack either, and should help to create a lot more fun in what we do and why we're doing it, giving us more of an interesting grind, and that sense of achievement and reward. Plus having it ready for when the dynamic economy comes along, with the quantum simulation, which hopefully we'll hear about one day soon, maybe at CitizenCon, but that's going to change up so much. Now moving on to the graphics, visual effects programming, and Planet Tech team. For global illumination, support was added for high-gloss speculation reflections, which builds on the previous rough specular work, plus the team added live updates to GPU ray tracing acceleration structures and began working on improvements to transparent objects. I'm really excited to see what Star Citizen will look like when it has ray tracing and global illumination. I will certainly need to sell a kidney so I can build a PC capable of running it though, but it'll be worth it. Now, talking of performance, the global illumination system now supports both temporal and spatial subsampling to accumulate the same visual results with fewer rays fired per frame. Plus, ongoing tasks consist of async creation and additional types of destructible renderer objects, such as gas cloud chunks, to reduce frame time spikes on the CPU. Not really sure what any of that means. Now, for PlanetTech version 5, the team focused on enhancing terrain performance through a compute shader-driven pipeline that caches material attributes to reduce redundant computation. And alongside this, the revamped material scattering system now supports physically based distribution, allowing for denser biomes such as jungles and forests by eliminating distinctions between small and large mesh ground covers. So really nice to hear more about PlanetTech version 5. This will bring the ability for jungles and dense forests to exist. Cannot wait to see those. Hopefully it's something that can be shown off at CitizenCon. And with it stating physically based as well, I do wonder if that means destructible elements in these biomes, like trees, harvesting them for wood or to clear an area to build upon, or even as a ship crashes into them, as this is something they want to be possible with the Maelstrom physical damage system, is as a ship comes in and crashes into the planet, it will create a wake behind it, be that through trees or soil or whatever. Now also, a new per-object climate concept and new terrain attributes were introduced, including geology and soil maps. And talking of soil, it was said a long while back, as part of the farming mechanic, you have to ensure that you have the right soil type for the crop or the plant that you are trying to grow, and I wonder if that has anything to do with it. Now, moving on to the fire hazard system, this feature is now complete, with focus shifting onto bug fixing and design balance, which, as we know, the fire hazard system is a feature coming in Alpha 4.0. Particle effect connection for jump tunnels were implemented, and the devs are now focusing on polishing the visual effects and supporting graphics technology. This is also something we are seeing in Alpha 4.0. The team also progressed with a significant data conversion to add the GUIDs, which they say will help the VFX artists manage particle effects more efficiently. And finally, for the team, performance improvements are underway, including using multiple threads for particle updates and adjusting VFX regression tests to detect issues earlier. I do wonder when we're going to have multi-threading for Vulkan, as that should help a lot of people with performance. But going forwards, we will see a lot more optimizations and performance improvements come along, especially as this foundational tech starts getting completed. They will be able to focus more on that stuff as well. Now, for the Interactables team, it just says they spent time on items for Pyro's mission content. The lighting team continued to support multiple areas of development, including Pyro's space stations, acidic caves, and closing out work for 324. And these space stations and acidic caves are also coming in Alpha 4.0, alongside updated rocky caves and sandy caves. For the location team, they progressed with tasks for Alpha 4.0, including adding new areas and additional polish to Pyro's space stations. They also pressed forward with ground bases, moving the initial modules through Greybox, plus improvements were made to several new location types coming with Pyro. And I don't think I've heard about these ground bases. I can't recall what they are exactly, so I'm looking forward to hearing more about them. They could be the forward operating bases that we've seen, they could be the settlements, they could be referring to the settlements in Pyro for the Headhunters, Xenothreat, Citizens of Prosperity. I don't know if they are new locations that we haven't seen, but I'm sure we'll find out. Now next we have the mission design team, who spent time updating the salvage mission archetype, enabling it to spawn ground panels and provide FPS gameplay at scrapyards, and this we have seen on Inside Star Citizen, again coming in 4.0 as an option for making money on foot, using the hand tools. But also for certain faction missions, stealing from one faction to support another. They also continued to work on the repair location missions, also shown on Inside Star Citizen, with the team targeting 3 main gameplay elements for its initial release, being charge and drain, so charging devices that use batteries for operation, replacing components like fuses in relays, and repairing pipes, so fixing damaged pipes using RMC. And again, looking forward to these types of missions. getting on with FPS jobs around a location and reacting to what happens, like if you get attacked or whatever, or the settlement gets attacked. But these are only coming to Pyro for 4.0. Post 4.0, I'm sure lots of these missions will roll out to Stanton as well. Now, the team are also continuing to design resource gathering missions, including determining which commodities buyers in Stanton would want extracting from Pyro. And this will be a great addition, offering a sort of gathering and hauling style job for players to travel through to Pyro, gather the stuff, then take it back to Stanton, likely offering a high payout as well, as it will be quite dangerous. Finally, for mission design, they are expanding the mechanic to include FPS resource gathering, which will be a step towards the basic MMO-type fetch quests, plus a new mission type progressed that the team will discuss in a future update. So personally, I am extremely happy to hear about this fetch quest type. This is something that I've been waiting for a long time in Star Citizen, having, say, a random NPC at a village just ask for 10 Heart of the Wood mushrooms or 20 Marok gems for whatever reason. If they can tie it into the economy, that would be good. But these types of missions don't need to pay amazingly, but they offer continuous gameplay at locations like settlements, where players can head off to various locations, gather the goods, whatever happens while they're there, and then return, which in turn will populate the verse with activities and things to do on a more micro level. Can't wait for that. Now, for the narrative team, they worked with design and branding to further develop the new contested zones and enhance the gameplay that players will experience there. Not too fussed about these, not my kind of thing. I'm sure some people will love them, especially if the loot is worth getting, but I will be off doing other stuff. The team also made improvements to the cargo hauling missions and continued to work on unannounced mission content that will come to Stanton and Pyro. The team also focused on improving AI behaviors at settlements to give a more natural feel to the NPCs that we will encounter there, and that's what we heard about earlier, where they're going around these locations just making sure they feel like they belong to that location and make sense to that location, bringing those settlements to life. For the online technology team, they progressed with features scheduled for Alpha 4.0 as well, plus significant progress was made on the updates for the mission and marker system. Talking of markers, I do wonder when we will see the actual map markers come along, being able to jump into the star map, place a marker anywhere and then travel to that. Hopefully that can release as soon as possible. The team also completed the new player trade service, which will allow players to trade game currencies in a server-meshed environment. And time was also spent testing and gathering metrics for a newly enabled easy anti-cheat feature in Evocati and the PTU. So it sounds like they're already testing this? I don't know. Finally, we have the visual effects team. They continued their work on support for jump points and dynamic fire, plus they completed their work on acidic caves, 2 vehicles, and an unannounced energy weapon that has functionality not seen in the PU before. Very interesting. I do wonder what that will be. So there you go, that was the monthly report for the Persistent Universe. Some great progress going on there, especially in terms of locations, planet tech, missions and AI, and so much more. They are really getting stuff ready for Alpha 4.0, which hopefully can come around for CitizenCon this year and see us through for the rest of the year. But we're only about a month away from CitizenCon, so they may start going quiet on some stuff, but it certainly feels like 4.0 is the big focus now. Anyway, with that said, if you do enjoy my videos, please do consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. It is much appreciated. Come and hang out over at twitch.tv/SuperMacBrother. You are all more than welcome over there. I stream 3 days a week between 2 and 6 PM BST. You are all more than welcome, whether you are new or a veteran. It is always great hanging out with you all, talking about Star Citizen, talking about it now, about its future, while playing some 324 as well. Hit the thumbs up if you don't mind, it does the channel a big favour, and tick that notification bell if you'd like to be notified when my videos go live. Again, a big thank you to my patrons and channel members. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.